I remember when I made my first game, I made a ton of mistakes. But spending so much time on these useless tasks was one of the worst ones. It delayed my game for weeks, if not months. By the end of this video, you'll stop focusing on small useless tasks, and it will skyrocket your progress. Now, this applies to every single bad habit that we have in our lives. To stop doing it, we first need to identify why we even do it in the first place. And the reason why me and most likely you too do these useless tasks and spend too much time on it is because it feels productive. And your game kind of feels better, it has more like juice, you can call it. And it just feels more like polished, you know? And it gives you kind of a sense of like an illusion of progress. But in reality, it doesn't move you any closer to release. Like sure, the game might feel more polished, it might feel more ready for release, but in reality you haven't even implemented or created your core mechanics. So these small polishing things aren't things you should be focusing on right now. You have to remember that time is finite. Every hour you spend on a small detail is an hour stolen from creating and improving a core feature of your game. And doing these small useless tasks, it can for example be like aligning the UI, like fixing these particle effects, simply like small optimizations in your code, which doesn't really matter. Like all these things, right? When you spend too much time on these things, you'll have moments where you kind of think to yourself, what did I even do this session? Like you can work for hours and then you can walk away and you don't even have it clearly in your head what you even did this session, because the things you did were so insignificant. It didn't move you any closer to your milestones, closer to release. It can actually be harmful because you'll lose motivation when you have these moments. You'll feel like your game isn't moving any closer to release. You don't get this feeling of accomplishment. Like you don't get this dopamine reward in the same way that you do when you finish a hard and important task. Like these small polishing tasks, they are just kind of easy. And easy tasks don't feel rewarding when you are done with them. Something that are hard and important will give you 10 times more dopamine and motivation, and it will be more fun to work on in general. Like these small useless things. And when you do this enough, it will kill your motivation, and they will be harmful because you don't get the same feeling of accomplishment. And you can spend hours polishing the UI, effects, movement, or fixing small bugs. But if you do this task before your core systems are complete, they will just take longer, and the polishing and quick fixes that you did will most likely become obsolete before you even release it. And I can promise you, if you stop prioritizing these small tasks and you instead think of them like secondary tasks, then you will at least become 20 times more productive. And 20 times, you might think, well, that's not that much. But if you work 10 hours and you become 20 times more productive, that 10-hour task suddenly takes 8 hours. And you might have heard of the 80-20 rule, and this applies to this concept very well. So we can say that 20% of the tasks produce 80% of the result. And the 20% of the tasks, which I'm talking about in this case, we can call them the big rocks. These are your core mechanics, like core gameplay features, game loop, monetization, level structure, everything. That's the 20% of tasks that give you 80% of the result. And then you have the 80% of your tasks, which are small sands. So you remember the 20% of tasks, those are your big rocks. And then the 80% of tasks are your small grains of sand. And that is going to be the useless tasks, like aligning the UI, for example, or like a button color, or like changing a button color, or polishing like particle effects. That's the 80% of tasks that give you 20% of the result. You can think of it like this. Filling a jar first with sand leaves no room for big rocks. Put the big rocks in first, then you can fill it with sand, like you're polishing things. Now, if you want to learn more stuff just like this and in more detail, first link in the description. So now we've gone over what they are and why they're harmful and what to focus on instead. Now we can talk about how you balance the big rocks and the small grains of sand, like practical. So you can actually implement it into your dev routine and you can get the minimum 20% more productive increase. And honestly, for most people, stopping doing these useless tasks are not going to be that hard when you just know the dangers like we talked about. But a quick reminder to like identify what useless tasks are and what like core systems are, like the big rocks and grains of sand. Will this task make my game meaningfully closer to completion? And if the answer is yes, then it's a big rock. If the answer is no, then it's just grains of sand. And as we talked about, you need to fill the jar with big rocks first, then you fill it with sand afterwards. You can also split it in your to-do list, like have the small tasks very separate from the big task, like the most important ones. And I'll show you an image on the screen right now on how I separate them. And I basically just have these big tasks as their own cards in my to-do list app or board. It's basically a board. And I have this small polishing and fixes inside its own card, like one card with like 10 different polishing things, which I kind of just check off. Like I don't treat it as a big accomplishment. I just treat them like, yes, I'm going to do these tasks, but I'm going to plan out when I'm going to do this. And I'm also not going to like treat it as a big accomplishment. I'm going to do them fast, I'm going to do them effectively, I'm not going to spend that much time on them. Because 80% of your time should go to making core mechanics and features. And you just do these small tasks when you have the playable version, or you are going to cool down, you have low energy or low motivation, then you can work on them. But they're not going to be your main work blocks. Like when you're sitting down to focus, you aren't going to do these small polishing things. You need to separate them. And just remember, your progress rate is determined by the big rocks, not the grains of sand. Now, I really appreciate you watching this entire video, and I'll sure you'll benefit a lot from it, especially if you did this a lot. Also, if you want to learn more just like this, top link in the description. You can check it out if you want to, but thank you for watching this video.